Hello, and welcome back to the Sleep Lab. Tonight we're going to drift back through history, into a quiet, mostly forgotten world where sleep was not a single, unbroken 8-hour block squeezed efficiently between two alarms, but something considerably slower, stranger, and more communal, shaped by candlelight, changing seasons, shared beds, and centuries of trial and error long before anyone understood melatonin or circadian rhythm at all. The way you slept last night, alone, in a dark room, for one continuous stretch, is actually a remarkably modern habit, and much of how humans slept for most of history looked, and felt, genuinely different. Tonight we're going to move through 100 small, relaxing facts about sleep's own forgotten history, one gentle detail after another, offered slowly enough to let each one settle before the next quietly arrives. Nothing tonight needs to be remembered. Just let it drift past you, the way an old, half-remembered custom drifts gently out of use. If this kind of journey is worth your time, a like, a subscribe, or a thought left below helps this small lab keep its lights on for other sleepy minds finding their way here. But for now, there is nothing you need to do except settle in, let your body grow heavy, and let 100 small truths about the forgotten art of sleep drift gently over you instead. Let's begin. 1. Before artificial lighting became widespread, many people in pre-industrial Europe slept in two distinct segments each night, waking briefly in the middle for an hour or more before returning to a second sleep. 2. This pattern, sometimes called segmented sleep or biphasic sleep, is documented in historical letters, court records, and medical texts stretching back several centuries, referenced casually, as though entirely ordinary. 3. The period between these two sleeps was often called the watch, a quiet, wakeful stretch used for prayer, reflection, quiet conversation, or simply resting peacefully in the dark without pressure to fall back asleep immediately. 4. Historian A. Roger Rickert, who extensively researched this forgotten sleep pattern, found more than 500 historical references to first and second sleep across diaries, literature, and medical writing. 5. This two-part sleep pattern appears to have gradually faded during the Industrial Revolution, as artificial lighting extended the evening and factory schedules demanded a single, more efficient block of rest. 6. Some modern sleep researchers have found that when volunteers are placed in an environment with extended winter-length darkness and no artificial light, many naturally, spontaneously settle into a similar two-part sleep pattern. 7. This suggests segmented sleep may not have been a strange historical quirk at all, but a genuinely natural human pattern, simply nudged aside once artificial light rewrote the length and shape of the average night. 8. Ancient Roman households often slept on simple frames strung with rope or leather webbing, an early ancestor of the modern box spring, supporting a mattress stuffed with straw, wool, or feathers depending on wealth. 9. Wealthy ancient Romans sometimes slept on elaborately carved bronze or wooden bed frames, while poorer citizens made do with simple straw pallets laid directly upon the floor. 10. In many medieval European households, an entire family, and sometimes visiting guests, would share a single large bed, a practical necessity given limited space and the genuine value of shared body warmth through cold nights. 11. Communal sleeping arrangements were common across numerous cultures throughout history, and privacy in sleep, something many people today consider essential, is actually a relatively recent cultural expectation. 12. In medieval inns, it was common practice for strangers to share a single bed with other travelers, an arrangement considered simply practical rather than unusual or uncomfortable at the time. 13. Feather mattresses, prized for their comfort, were considered a genuine luxury throughout much of European history, valuable enough to be specifically listed and passed down within wills and family inheritances. 14. In ancient Egypt, wealthier citizens slept on raised beds with headrests carved from wood, stone, or ivory rather than soft pillows, believed to help keep insects away from the head and face during sleep. 15. Ancient Egyptian headrests were often curved to cradle the neck, a design historians believe may have also helped preserve elaborate hairstyles or wigs while sleeping. 16. In ancient China, porcelain pillows were used for centuries, prized for their coolness in warm weather, and some were even believed to carry specific therapeutic benefits according to traditional medical thought. 17. Traditional Japanese sleeping arrangements historically involved a futon, a thin, portable mattress laid directly on tatami mat flooring and folded away each morning to free up the room for daytime use. 18. This practice of folding away bedding each morning reflects an entirely different relationship with sleeping space compared to the fixed, dedicated bedrooms common in much of the modern world today. 19. Hammocks, now often associated with leisure, were originally developed by indigenous peoples of Central and South America, valued for keeping sleepers safely off the ground, away from insects, snakes, and dampness. 20. European sailors adopted hammocks after encountering them during early voyages to the Americas, finding them genuinely practical for sleeping safely aboard a rocking, space-limited ship. 21. The gentle rocking motion of a hammock has since been studied by modern sleep researchers, who found it can genuinely help people fall asleep faster and may improve certain aspects of sleep quality. 22. In many nomadic cultures throughout history, sleep took place on portable bedding easily packed and carried, reflecting a fundamentally different, more mobile relationship with rest than the fixed bedroom most people know today. 23. The Mongolian gur, a portable round tent still used by nomadic herders today, traditionally organized sleeping space according to specific family roles and social hierarchy within the structure. 24. Throughout much of history, going to sleep and waking were guided almost entirely by natural light rather than any clock, meaning sleep timing shifted gradually and naturally alongside the changing seasons. 25. Before reliable artificial lighting, winter nights in many parts of the world genuinely, naturally allowed for considerably more total sleep time than summer nights, when daylight stretched long into the evening. 26. The concept of a fixed, year-round bedtime is a relatively modern invention, made possible only once artificial light freed sleep from its ancient, seasonal dependence on natural darkness. 27. Candlelight, once the primary source of nighttime illumination for centuries, was genuinely expensive, meaning many households simply went to sleep shortly after sundown out of practical necessity rather than personal preference. 28. The phrase burning the midnight oil, now used casually to describe staying up late, originally referred quite literally to the genuine cost and effort of keeping an oil lamp lit long after dark. 29. Ancient Greek and Roman writers occasionally referenced dreams and sleep as a kind of shared, communal experience, believing certain dreams could carry meaning relevant not just to the individual, but to the wider community. 30. We've reached the first third of tonight's list. Somewhere in history, a candle has just been carefully, quietly snuffed out, and an entire household is settling gently into the dark. 31. Many ancient cultures developed formal dream interpretation traditions, including detailed dream dictionaries in ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, reflecting a widespread, ancient belief that dreams carry genuine guidance or warning. 32. The ancient Greek practice of temple incubation, sleeping within a sacred healing sanctuary in hopes of receiving a meaningful dream, reflected a deep, sincerely held belief in sleep's connection to both healing and divine communication. 33. In several African cultural traditions, historically and today, dreams have been treated as important messages from ancestors, discussed openly and communally rather than treated as private, individual experience alone. 34. Traditional Aboriginal Australian culture includes the concept of the dreamtime, a foundational spiritual framework connecting creation, ancestry, and the living world, reflecting an entirely distinct, deeply significant relationship with sleep and dreaming. 35. Throughout much of history, sleeping outdoors or in open-air structures was far more common than it is today, meaning people historically had considerably more regular, direct exposure to natural darkness and starlight. 36. Some historians believe this closer historical relationship with natural darkness may have supported more consistent circadian rhythm regulation compared to the brightly lit indoor evenings common today. 37. Bed curtains, common in wealthier European households from the medieval period through the 18th century, served both to retain warmth and to create a small, private, enclosed sleeping space within an otherwise larger, shared room. 38. In colder climates, entire families sometimes slept close together specifically for warmth, a practical necessity in an era before central heating made individual, separate bedrooms genuinely comfortable. 39. Straw-filled mattresses, common for centuries among ordinary households, needed to be regularly refreshed, since old, compacted straw could become uncomfortable and, over time, attract unwelcome insects. 40. The saying "sleep tight," often assumed to reference rope-strung bed frames requiring periodic tightening to stay properly supportive, remains a popular, though not entirely confirmed, piece of historical bedtime folklore. 41. Throughout much of history, sleepwear as a distinct category of clothing barely existed, and many people simply slept in the same clothing worn during the day, or in minimal, simple garments reserved specifically for nighttime. 42. Nightcaps, small fabric caps worn to bed, became common in parts of Europe partly for genuine warmth in poorly heated homes, and partly to help protect elaborate daytime hairstyles overnight. 43. Ancient Chinese emperors reportedly employed specific ritual practices surrounding sleep, including carefully timed rest periods believed to align with cosmological principles central to traditional Chinese thought. 44. Traditional Indian Ayurvedic practice historically emphasized aligning sleep timing with natural daily rhythms, recommending an earlier bedtime and earlier waking closely tied to the rising and setting of the sun. 45. Many indigenous cultures throughout history developed detailed, communal lullaby and storytelling traditions specifically designed to ease children gently into sleep, passed carefully down through many successive generations. 46. Lullabies, found in nearly every documented culture throughout human history, are believed by researchers to serve a genuinely universal function, using rhythm and gentle repetition to help calm a restless, waking mind. 47. Some ethnomusicologists have found that lullabies across entirely unrelated, distant cultures share strikingly similar musical characteristics, including slow tempo and simple, repeating melodic patterns. 48. Throughout much of history, communities often shared responsibility for a household's overnight watch, particularly in smaller villages, allowing most residents to sleep more soundly knowing someone remained gently alert. 49. The night watchman tradition, common in medieval European towns, involved a designated person walking the streets through the night, calling out the hour and helping maintain a general, communal sense of safety. 50. We've reached the halfway point of tonight's list. Somewhere in history, a night watchman has just called out the hour, and an entire town continues quietly, safely sleeping. 51. In many historical societies, the transition into sleep was marked by specific, shared rituals, prayers, blessings, or quiet family conversation, treating bedtime as a meaningful, deliberate transition rather than a simple, abrupt stop. 52. Ancient Jewish tradition includes the Shema prayer, historically recited before sleep, reflecting a long, continuous practice of using quiet, spoken ritual to ease the mind gently toward rest. 53. Many Christian traditions historically incorporated evening prayer as a formal part of daily religious practice, treating the approach of sleep as a moment worth deliberate, quiet reflection. 54. Islamic tradition includes specific recommended prayers and practices before sleep, reflecting centuries of continuous, careful attention to the spiritual and physical transition into rest. 55. Buddhist meditation traditions have long incorporated specific practices intended to calm the mind before sleep, some of which closely resemble modern mindfulness techniques now recommended by contemporary sleep researchers. 56. Throughout history, herbal sleep aids were prepared and shared within households according to closely guarded family knowledge, often passed down orally from one generation of caregivers to the next. 57. Warm milk before bed, a remedy still recommended informally today, has historical roots stretching back centuries, and modern research has found modest, genuine support for its mildly calming effect. 58. Throughout much of history, the bedroom itself was a considerably more multipurpose space than it is today, sometimes used for eating, receiving visitors, or conducting business, rather than being reserved specifically, exclusively for sleep. 59. The modern idea of a bedroom used exclusively for sleep and quiet privacy developed gradually, closely tied to broader historical shifts toward smaller households and increasingly individualized living space. 60. Ancient Roman writers occasionally complained about noisy city streets disrupting sleep, evidence that noise-related sleep disturbance is a genuinely old, ordinary human complaint rather than a uniquely modern frustration. 61. Throughout history, various cultures developed practical techniques for blocking unwanted noise or light during sleep, including simple woven screens, heavy curtains, and carefully positioned sleeping quarters. 62. Ancient Egyptian nobility sometimes employed servants specifically tasked with fanning them gently through the night, both for cooling comfort and to help keep insects away during sleep. 63. In many historical societies, seasonal changes in sleeping arrangements were entirely ordinary, with households moving bedding to cooler or warmer parts of a home depending on the time of year. 64. Sleeping porches, popular in parts of the United States during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, allowed families to sleep outdoors in warm weather, believed at the time to offer genuine health benefits through fresh air. 65. The sleeping porch trend was partly influenced by tuberculosis treatment recommendations of the era, which emphasized fresh air exposure, a belief that, while imperfectly understood, carried some genuine underlying merit. 66. Throughout much of history, mattresses were regularly aired outdoors, beaten to remove dust, and refreshed with new stuffing, an ongoing, physically demanding form of household maintenance largely unfamiliar to most people today. 67. Wealthy households in various historical periods employed dedicated staff specifically responsible for preparing and maintaining bedding, reflecting how much labor and attention sleep-related care once genuinely required. 68. In many traditional cultures, the marital bed itself carried significant symbolic and ceremonial weight, sometimes specially constructed or blessed as part of wedding traditions. 69. Throughout history, infants in many cultures slept close beside their parents rather than in a separate space, a practice called co-sleeping, still common in many parts of the world today. 70. Cradle rocking, a practice found across countless historical cultures, reflects a widely, independently discovered understanding that gentle, rhythmic motion genuinely helps ease infants into sleep. 71. Some historical societies developed specific, dedicated communal sleeping structures for unmarried young men or women, a formalized arrangement separate from a family's main household sleeping space. 72. Throughout history, travelers relied on a wide range of temporary sleeping arrangements, from roadside inns to monasteries offering hospitality, reflecting a long tradition of communities extending rest and shelter to strangers. 73. Medieval monasteries often maintained strict, carefully scheduled sleep patterns tied closely to religious observance, including periods of nighttime prayer that interrupted an otherwise continuous night's rest. 74. This monastic practice of structured nighttime waking for prayer bears some genuine resemblance to the broader historical pattern of segmented sleep discussed earlier tonight, arrived at independently through religious discipline. 75. Throughout history, various cultures developed specific taboos or beliefs surrounding the position in which a person slept, sometimes connected to spiritual beliefs about vulnerability or protection during rest. 76. In several historical Chinese traditions, sleeping direction relative to compass orientation was considered genuinely significant, reflecting the broader influence of feng shui principles on daily, domestic life. 77. Ancient Egyptian and Mesopotamian cultures both developed detailed beliefs connecting the moon's phases to sleep quality, an early, intuitive attempt to link natural cosmic rhythm with human rest. 78. Throughout history, various cultures developed protective sleep-related objects, amulets, charms, or symbols placed near a sleeping person or child, reflecting a widespread, comforting belief in guarding the vulnerability of sleep. 79. The historical use of a dreamcatcher within certain Ojibwe and other indigenous North American traditions reflects a specific, culturally significant belief in filtering and protecting a sleeper's dreams overnight. 80. Throughout much of history, sleep and storytelling were closely intertwined, with oral traditions specifically reserving certain stories, folktales, and myths for the quiet, receptive hours just before sleep. 81. Many historical societies believed the period just before sleep carried special significance for absorbing important cultural or moral lessons, and intuition. Modern research on pre-sleep memory consolidation has since genuinely, partially supported. 82. The transition from candlelight to gas lighting during the 19th century, and later to electric lighting, dramatically, measurably extended the length of the average person's waking evening. 83. Thomas Edison, inventor of the practical incandescent light bulb, reportedly viewed sleep itself as an inefficient waste of time, a view that quietly, considerably influenced broader cultural attitudes toward rest during the industrial era. 84. The widespread adoption of standardized work schedules during the Industrial Revolution fundamentally reshaped sleep patterns, replacing the more flexible, sun-guided rhythms of earlier agricultural life. 85. Shift work, now a significant, well-studied contributor to sleep disruption, became considerably more widespread only once industrial factories began operating continuously across day and night. 86. Throughout most of human history, before industrialization, the vast majority of people's sleep and waking hours were closely, naturally tied to agricultural and seasonal demands rather than any fixed, artificial schedule. 87. The modern 8-hour sleep recommendation, now widely repeated, is a relatively recent, generalized guideline, whereas historical sleep patterns varied considerably depending on season, occupation, and available light. 88. Napping, now sometimes viewed in certain modern cultures as a sign of laziness, was historically an entirely ordinary, accepted part of the daily rhythm across numerous cultures, particularly in hot climates. 89. The siesta tradition, still practiced in parts of Spain, Latin America, and the Mediterranean, reflects centuries of practical adaptation to the genuine physical difficulty of working through the hottest part of the day. 90. Some modern sleep researchers have found genuine evidence supporting midday napping, noting measurable benefits for alertness and mood, quietly lending scientific support to a practice many older traditions never seriously questioned. 91. Throughout history, various cultures developed specific herbal or floral scents believed to encourage restful sleep, including lavender-filled pillows documented in European households for centuries. 92. Ancient Egyptian tombs have been found containing small pillows or headrests scented with natural aromatics, suggesting a genuinely ancient belief connecting fragrance with peaceful, undisturbed rest. 93. The historical practice of reading or being read to before sleep, common in literate households for centuries, closely parallels modern recommendations for calm, screen-free pre-sleep activity. 94. Throughout history, the very concept of insomnia was documented and discussed, appearing in ancient medical texts from Egypt, Greece, and China alike, confirming that difficulty sleeping is a genuinely old, widely shared human experience. 95. Ancient Greek physicians recommended a range of remedies for sleeplessness, including warm baths, quiet surroundings, and moderation in evening food and drink, guidance that remains broadly, genuinely consistent with modern sleep advice today. 96. Many of history's most basic sleep recommendations, quiet, darkness, warmth, comfort, and a calm mind, have remained remarkably consistent across thousands of years in countless, entirely separate cultures. 97. What has changed considerably throughout history is not the basic human need for rest itself, but the tools, schedules, and surrounding rituals humans have built, gradually, around meeting that same ancient, unchanging need. 98. In rediscovering some of these older, gentler rhythms, segmented rest, quiet ritual, communal comfort, modern sleep researchers have found genuine, evidence-based value hiding quietly within practices many people once dismissed as simply old-fashioned. 99. Somewhere in history, in candlelight, moonlight, or the deep quiet of a shared, communal room, someone once settled gently into sleep using almost exactly the same simple, unhurried care you might offer yourself tonight. 100. And perhaps that is the gentlest truth of all, that no matter how sleep has changed shape across the centuries, the quiet, ancient art of simply, finally letting go and resting has never actually been forgotten at all, only waiting patiently for you to remember it tonight. We have reached the end of tonight's 100 small journeys through sleep's own long, forgotten history. We touched candlelit households drifting into a first and second sleep, and hammocks first woven by hands far from any modern city. We remembered lullabies sung in nearly identical rhythm across cultures that never once met, and night watchmen calling out the hour so an entire town could rest a little easier. We walked through monasteries waking gently for midnight prayer, and Roman writers grumbling, centuries ago, about the very same noisy streets that still occasionally disturb sleep today. There is something quietly worth carrying from a journey like tonight's, a reminder that the basic, tender art of rest has never actually needed reinventing, only remembering, gently, one candle, one lullaby, one quiet ritual at a time. If tonight's 100 old truths were worth your time, a like, a subscribe, or a thought left below helps the Sleep Lab stay open for the next curious, sleepy mind who finds their way here. And if you're still awake, there's another story waiting just beyond this one, whenever you're ready for it. But for now, let yourself practice this same old, gentle art exactly as countless generations before you already have. Let your body grow heavy. Let your breathing slow. Sleep well. And good night.